My inspiration for the story, it all starts with the magical Negro trope. And just to define that on my own terms, the magical Negro trope is a recurring character in movie history. It's a black character who doesn't have his or her own internal life. They're only really there to support the white protagonist. The tone of the film is very particular, and the way I always describe its sense of play is that you're always trying to find that exact line between wouldn't that be crazy if it happened, and that's so crazy it would never happen, and trying to ride right up against the edge of that. We're pretty good at telling stories about overt racism. So slavery stories, legal discrimination, we're reasonably good at telling those stories, partially because they're visual. Someone was enslaved, someone was free, someone couldn't drink at a water fountain and then they could. But in my life, the more common impacts of racism, and I would argue the more insidious version of racism, is the sort of pervasive systemic racism that leads to unconscious bias, leads to all kinds of troubling economic and political and social realities, but it's incredibly hard to pin down. It's a ghost in the machine is the phrase. I think it's Toni Morrison's phrase. Humor is a tool to make impossible conversations possible. And there are a couple of things that are impossible about the conversation I'm trying to have in this film. One is the shame of what I'm talking about is so intense. For me as a black person to raise my hand and say, hey, I feel like I over-accommodated white people for my whole life is incredibly embarrassing. And to me, humor is what makes it bearable for me to say that out loud. And hopefully, if other black people have experienced things like this, will make it possible for them to look at those behaviors in themselves and have some grace and some love and even laugh at those things. Prep is where it really gets fun for me, because, you're all in an office together and you're all there and you're all exchanging ideas, and then shooting is obviously its own thrill, because the actors are one of my favorite collaborators, and so there's this brief, beautiful window where you actually have them with you. And then editing is such a beautiful sort of storytelling process, on through color and post. I mean, to me, it's there's just such a pleasure in working with other people and bouncing off their ideas, and that sort of sublime thing of getting to an idea and not knowing where it came from. Where you're sort of like, oh, I thought that was your idea. Oh, I thought that was your idea. No, that was your idea. Where it really becomes this sort of organism beyond all of you that has a life and a voice and a specificity to it, but yeah, you all sort of had to come together to add your piece for it to have that sort of individuality.